the value of a god, and makes the bourgeois the mean, low money grabber that he is. The working man who knows nothing of this feeling of reverence for money is therefore less grasping than the bourgeois, whose whole activity is for the purpose of gain, who sees in the accumulations of his money bags the end and aim of life. Hence the workman is much less prejudiced, has a clearer eye for facts as they than the bourgeois, and does not look at everything through the spectacles of personal selfishness. His faulty education saves him from religious prepossessions. He does not understand religious questions, does not trouble himself about them, knows nothing of the fanaticism that holds the bourgeoisie bound, and if he chances to have any religion, he has it only in name, not even in theory. Practically he lives for this world, and strives to make himself at home in it. All the writers of the bourgeoisie are unanimous on this point, that the workers are not religious, and do not attend church. From the general statement, are to be accepted the Irish, a few elderly people, and the half-bourgeois, the overlookers, foremen, and the like, but among the masses there prevails almost universally a total indifference to religion, or at the utmost, some trace of deism too undeveloped to amount to more than mere words, or a vague dread of the words infidel, atheist, etc. The clergy of all sects is in very bad odor with the working men, though the loss of its influence is recent. At present, however, the mere cry "he's a parson" is often enough to drive one of the clergy from the platform of a public meeting. And like the rest of the conditions under which he lives, his want of religious and other culture contributes to keep the working man more unconstrained, freer from inherited stable tenets and cut-and-dried opinions, than the bourgeois who is saturated with the class prejudices poured into him from his earliest youth. There is nothing to be done with the bourgeois. He is essentially conservative in however liberal a guise. His interest is bound up with that of the property-holding class. He is dead to all active movement. He is losing his position in the forefront of England's historical development. The workers are taking his place, in rightful claim first, then in fact. All this, together with the correspondent public action of the workers, with which we shall deal later, forms the favourable side of the character of this class. The unfavourable one may be quite as briefly summed up, and follows quite as naturally out of the given causes. Drunkenness, sexual irregularities, brutality, and disregard for the rights of property are the chief points with which the bourgeois charges them. That they drink heavily is to be expected. Sheriff Allison asserts that in Glasgow some 30,000 working men get drunk every Saturday night, and the estimate is certainly not exaggerated, and that in that city in 1830, 1 house in 12, and in 1840, 1 house in 10, was a public house, that in Scotland, in 1823, excise was paid upon 2,300,000 gallons, in 1837, upon 6,620,000 gallons, in England, in 1823, upon 1,976,000 gallons, and in 1837, upon 7,875,000 gallons of spirits. The Beer Act of 1830, which facilitated the opening of beerhouses, jerry shops, whose keepers are licensed to sell beer, to be drunk on the premises, facilitated the spread of intemperance by bringing a beerhouse, so to say, to everybody's door. In nearly every street there are several such beerhouses, and among 2 or 3 neighbouring houses in the country one is sure to be a jerry shop. Besides these, there are hush-ups in multitudes, secret drinking places which are not licensed, and quite as many secret distilleries which produce great quantities of spirits in retired spots, rarely visited by the police, in the great cities. Gaskell estimates these secret distilleries in Manchester alone at more than 100, and their product at 156,000 gallons at the least. In Manchester there are, besides, more than 1,000 public houses selling all sorts of alcoholic drinks, or quite as many in proportion to the number of inhabitants as in Glasgow. In all other great towns, the state of things is the same. And when one considers, apart from the usual consequences of intemperance, that men and women, even children, often mothers with babies in their arms, come into contact in these places with the most degraded victims of the bourgeois regime, with thieves, swindlers, and prostitutes, when one reflects that many a mother gives the baby on her arm gin to drink, the demoralizing effects of frequenting such places cannot be denied. On Saturday evenings, especially when wages are paid, and work stops somewhat earlier than usual, when the whole working class pours from its own poor quarters into the main thoroughfares, intemperance may be seen in all its brutality. I have rarely come out of Manchester on such an evening without meeting numbers of people staggering and seeing others lying in the gutter. On Sunday evening the same scene is usually repeated, only less noisily. And when their money is spent, the drunkards go to the nearest pawn shop, of which there are plenty in every city, over 60 in Manchester, and 10 or 12 in a single street of Salford, Chapel Street, and pawn whatever they possess. Furniture, Sunday clothes where such exist, kitchen utensils in masses, are fetched from the pawnbrokers on Saturday night only to wander back, almost without fail, before the next Wednesday, until at last some accident makes the final redemption impossible, and one article after another falls into the clutches of the usurer, or until he refuses to give a single farthing more upon the battered, used-up pledge. When one has seen the extent of intemperance among the workers in England, one readily believes Lord Ashley's statement, that this class annually expends something like £25 million upon intoxicating liquor and the deterioration in external conditions, the frightful shattering of mental and physical health, the ruin of all domestic relations which follow, may readily be imagined. True, the temperance societies have done much, but what are a few thousand teetotalers among the millions of workers? When Father Matthew, the Irish apostle of temperance, passes through the English cities, from 30 to 60,000 workers take the pledge, but most of them break it again within a month. If one counts up the immense numbers who have taken the pledge in the last 3 or 4 years in Manchester, the total is greater than the whole population of the town, and still it is by no means evident that intemperance is diminishing. Next to intemperance in the enjoyment of intoxicating liquors, one of the principal faults of English working men is sexual license. But this too follows with relentless logic, with inevitable necessity out of the position of a class left to itself, with no means of making fitting use of its freedom. The bourgeoisie has left the working class only these two pleasures, while imposing upon it a multitude of labors and hardships, and the consequences that the working men, in order to get something from life, concentrate their whole energy upon these two enjoyments, carry them to excess, surrender to them in the most unbridled manner. When people are placed under conditions which appeal to the brute only, what remains to them, but to rebel, or to succumb to utter brutality? And when, moreover, the bourgeoisie does its full share in maintaining prostitution, and how many of the 40,000 prostitutes who fill the streets of London every evening live upon the virtuous bourgeoisie? How many of them owe it to the seduction of a bourgeois, that they must offer their bodies to the passers-by in order to live? Surely it has least of all a right to reproach the workers with their sexual brutality. The failings of the workers in general may be traced to an unbridled thirst for pleasure, to want of providence, and of flexibility in fitting into the social order, to the general inability to sacrifice the pleasure of the moment to a remoter advantage. But is that to be wondered at? When a class can purchase few and only the most sensual pleasures by its wearying toil, must it not give itself over blindly and madly to those pleasures? A class about whose education no one troubles himself, which is a play ball to 1,000 chances, knows no security in life. What incentives has such a class to providence, to respectability, to sacrifice the pleasure of the moment for a remoter enjoyment, most uncertain precisely by reason of the perpetually varying, shifting conditions under which the proletariat lives? A class which bears all the disadvantages of the social order without enjoying its advantages, one to which the social system appears in purely hostile aspects. Who can demand that such a class respect this social order? Verily that is asking much. But the working man cannot escape the present arrangement of society, so long as it exists, and when the individual worker resists it, the greatest injury falls upon himself. Thus the social order makes family life almost impossible for the worker. In a comfortless filthy house, hardly good enough for mere nightly shelter, ill-furnished, often neither rain-tight nor warm, a foul atmosphere filling rooms overcrowded with human beings, no domestic comfort is possible. The husband works the whole day through, perhaps the wife also, and the elder children, all in different places. They meet night and morning only, all under perpetual temptation to drink. What family life is possible under such conditions? Yet the working man cannot escape from the family, must live in the family, and the consequence is a perpetual succession of family troubles, domestic quarrels, most demoralizing for parents and children alike. Neglect of all domestic duties, neglect of the children, especially, is only too common among the English working people, and only too vigorously fostered by the existing institutions of society. And children growing up in this savage way, amidst these demoralizing influences, are expected to turn out goody-goody and moral in the end. Verily the requirements are naive, which the self-satisfied bourgeois makes upon